Rajni, what's wrong?
Tom, I have a script and I don't know what to do with it. Should I burn it? Feed it to my cat?
You need some writers group therapy.
Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. So as you guys know, we co-lead a writers group here in Los Angeles, and we're so excited to feature another member of our writers group, Rebekah Walsh. Rebekah, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yay! So Rebekah, tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Well, my current work in progress is Crossplay, and it is a young adult novel about a transgender cosplayer named Addie, who basically uses the art of costuming to really figure out who she is as a person and to come to terms with her identity. It's been a lot of fun to write.
Very cool. How did you come up with that concept?
Well, I actually came up with the idea when I went to my first Comic-Con, which was only a couple of years ago. It was in Phoenix, and I was just blown away by the costumes. If you've ever been to a Comic-Con, then you know that the costumes are most of the draw, just because people go all out. It's amazing. The costumes get so elaborate. And I just really was obsessed with all of the people who were doing the gender-bending costumes. Like, I saw a woman who was Newt Scamander from Fantastic Beasts, and I saw this big guy who was dressed up as Sailor Moon, and it was just so fascinating. And I had this character just jump into my head fully formed, and I knew exactly what I wanted her to go through. Her story just was there. Like, I saw her trying to dress as a female character for the first time. I saw her realization that this wasn't just a hobby, that this was something that she really identified with. You know, her coming out to her two best girlfriends. I saw her meeting this character who was going to push her out of her comfort zone. And, you know, I saw her coming out to her parents. And it was the first time that a fully formed story just popped into my head. And I just couldn't wait to get home and write it.
That's awesome. I wish I would have those moments.
It was pretty cool.
Are you a cosplayer?
I have dabbled very, very minutely in cosplaying, in that I wore a dress that I got from Hot Topic to be Joy at the last Comic-Con that I went. It was actually WonderCon. I think that's in Anaheim. So yeah, no, I haven't done it a lot. I've tried to do a lot of research. I've tried to talk to a lot of people that I know who do cosplay, and you know, it's definitely been a lot of research, you know, and I have friends who do Comic-Cons all the time, so whenever I write Comic-Con scenes, they always come up to me afterwards like, no, like, you got so much wrong, let us help you. And I'm like, yes, please help me. But mostly it's just been fun because I've been getting to learn a lot more about the transgender community and just, you know, what it's like to go through this sort of transition. So
yeah, well, we're also learning about it because we're reading chapters of your book in the writers group, which has been it's been a great story, regardless of the subject matter there. It's just a really cool story about the characters and their interactions. The one question I was wondering, and the way you described it just now, you talk about Addie as the main character, but we know we start the story with Adam. So
right, Adam.
Was Addie the original character, and then you created Adam before that, or was it Adam then became Addie like it does in the story?
I guess I would have to say, since this character is physically male, I don't know, she kind of popped into my head as a transgender girl. You know, there was never a point where I thought, like, oh yeah, it's just this guy and he likes to wear female clothes. It's like, no, this is the vehicle that this character rides in order to, you know, really figure out who she is and that she is not a he. So, I could say it's a little bit of both, but I think she was always a she in my head. Like, I knew what story I wanted to tell.
Great, yeah, that's cool.
You said you're learning more about that community. So what challenges did you face in writing about LGBT characters and how to represent them fairly and not in a cliche manner?
Well, I think that really you kind of answered your question right there. You just have to avoid cliches. I think that mostly what it comes down to is representation matters so much. These days, like, everyone knows what gay means, but when you have a trans character, there's a whole language that comes with the transgender community. Like, there's just these words that we don't throw around. Like, can I quiz you guys real quick? I want to see if you know what some things mean.
Okay.
Oh no, a quiz. Let's try it.
It's okay. What does AFAB mean? If someone was to say that they are an AFAB, what do you think that means?
They're absolutely fabulous.
That's what I would think too, right?
It's a good guess.
Is that what it means?
That one is assigned female at birth. So if this character is actually an AMAB, she was assigned male at birth. So another one, let's see. Do you know what HRT stands for?
I'm thinking like human resources training.
Well, yeah, probably, but
Tom?
That one is actually... Oh, go ahead.
Tom, do you know? You want to take a guess?
Oh, I said hit, run, throw. And I'm not a sports person either,
therapy.
so...
Yeah. Hormone replacement therapy. So
that's
something
okay.
that Addie has not gone through yet, but if she started taking estrogen, she'd be on HRT. Like, basically, what I'm trying to illustrate is that there is so much. It's the culture of trans is so deep and like varied, and the words are updating all of the time, and there's so much that is just not in vogue. You know what I mean? So it's important to represent them. Yeah.
Well, for the longest time, people didn't talk about it at all, so they had no common language. Everybody was, kind of by themselves, and now there's a community, and they have to develop a common language. So that's very interesting. Have you spoken to transgender people? Was that part of your research?
Oh yeah, I actually I identify as non-binary, so I've actually I've actually joined just trans community like Facebook groups, and I go to like cafes and stuff, and part of it's just for my own sake, but also just like I want to be able to hear these stories just so I can represent them well. And just being a part of a trans Facebook group and reading things that people post is amazing. A lot of it is, do I pass? Someone will post a selfie, and the question is always, do I pass? And it's such a big deal. And then another thing is like situations where you get misgendered. Everybody at work knows I'm trans, and yet this guy called me he the other day. Like, it ruined my whole day. It's there's just so much of, there's such an experience that I think that anybody who's not involved with it, it doesn't even occur to you. What if someone thinks I'm a woman today? Then well, if you're not trans or non-binary or whatever, that's not something that's going to cross your mind. But if you're trans, like, that's something that crosses your mind every second of every day. So it's just delving into that and just tearing that open and just putting it on a page so someone can actually read it and understand that experience is just something that I think is really important. It's just to give people the language to talk about it. Like, if there's somebody who's always known that something was wrong but they never had the words for it, but they read a book and they're like, yes, that's it. And also, let's say you're coming out to your parents and it's like, I'm non-binary. Like, what's non-binary? What does that mean? And it's like, well, that character on that show, if you have something to point to and be like, that's an example, and also just seeing yourself on a screen or seeing yourself on a page, like, can really, I don't know, it can be really comforting, that you're not alone, you have a community, you're not the only person, you're not the first person who has felt this way. So it's just so important to have media, whether it's books or TV or movies or podcasts, that just really aren't afraid to dive into this experience and really open it up so people can see it.
Yeah, how do you feel about modern television and movies now? We're getting to the point where gay characters are not the subject of the story; they're just characters.
Right, right.
The story isn't about them being gay; it's about whatever the story is about.
Right, I love that. No, anytime I see a character who's not gay to be played as a joke, and it's not gay because we're, it's a gay story. We have to have the coming out. It's just a part of his personality. It makes me so happy because it normalizes it. You know what I mean? Like, it definitely just makes it a lot more human. It's not something that's just played for a trick. It's just, an aspect of this character's character. And I think that right now, doing that with gay is really easy, but doing that with trans hasn't really started happening yet, so.
Yeah, that's what I was figuring. It's like that's still the story unto itself at this point because it's still so new for people to talk about openly. But you're doing a great job with your story. I think it's a really accessible story for anybody because it's really just like you said, a coming of age story. It's not necessarily a trans story. It's a coming of age story that has to be about a young trans girl. So
yeah, it's educational also, like in a non-preachy way. Because I know nothing about that community, but it's helping me learn without being like, okay, and here's checkpoint 1, 2, 3, and you're like, oh no, I feel horrible because I didn't know that.
Bullet points,
Yeah.
A slideshow. Here, sit down, take out your notebooks.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know that it's a YA book, and it's kind of a hip thing right now in YA. A lot of gay, transgender, whatever fiction. I've been seeing. I work at a library. I've been seeing a lot of books with those themes. Obviously, it fits very well in YA, but why'd you pick YA? Why not adult? Why not kids?
I think that I've tried writing other things. I've tried writing fantasy and sci-fi and all of that, which, one of the great things about YA is that it is very versatile and you can branch into those things, but I've always just been so much more interested in just interpersonal relationships. Like, when you have two characters collide with each other and they affect each other, and sometimes it's for better and sometimes it's for worse, and like sometimes it doesn't work out and you end up walking away, but it doesn't matter because you learned something from that person and that person changed you, whether you want them to have changed you or not, for better or worse. And I don't know, it's just like, for me, that's just so juicy. And it's, when you're doing YA, it's all about, you're a young person who is, faced with some sort of obstacle, because all books have obstacles, and just when that obstacle is your own identity, it's I don't know, it's just so juicy, it's like, who am I, what do I want, what am I going to do with my life? All of those questions are just thrown at you when you're a teenager, and it's, for YA, you don't need explosions, you don't need, aliens, whatever it is, you don't need a huge twist at the end, although books generally are better when they have a huge twist at the end, I don't know, but it can just be two people, affecting each other and having conversations, and that's a book. And it's, I don't know, it's fascinating to me because people are fascinating, so I love it. I think it's my favorite genre. It definitely is.
Very cool. So if people want to check out your work online, or I don't know if you're putting excerpts of your book on your website or anything like that, but if people want to learn more about you and about Crossplay, where should they go? How should they find you?
I don't necessarily have an online presence yet, but I am a part of a writing group on Wednesday nights that goes from 6 to 9 at a Panera in Sherman Oaks. If you ever want to see me or hear just works of local writers, and even bring stuff yourself that you want to read and get feedback, then that's where you'll find me.
And how about for the rest of you? If you have any questions for Rebekah, tweet it at us at WG Therapy. You can also check us out online at writersgrouptherapy.com. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and share it with your friends. We'll see you next week.